Chapter 1. The Letter. Rain pattered against the high windows of the Bradford Historical Library as Sophia Jenkins navigated her way through the grand marble entrance hall. The early Monday morning stillness was a comfort to her. These quiet moments before the library opened were precious. Her practical low heels clicked against the polished floor, echoing in the empty space as she adjusted the practical bun that contained her unruly auburn curls. Sophia had arrived earlier than usual, eager to begin the week. At 32 years of age, she had already established herself as one of the country's foremost experts in historical preservation. The Bradford Library, with its Victorian-era grandeur supplemented by modern wings and conservation facilities, had become her sanctuary. "Morning, Dr. Jenkins," called the security guard, offering a friendly wave. "Beating the rain, I see." "Trying to, Jim," she replied with a small smile, shaking droplets from her sensible coat. Sophia wasn't one for extensive small talk, but she'd developed a comfortable rapport with the regular staff over her 5 years as head curator of the rare manuscripts collection. She made her way to her office, a glass-enclosed space that overlooked the main conservation lab. Already, she could see a junior archivist working with a 17th-century journal. Sophia's hazel eyes narrowed as she observed the young woman's technique. After settling her bag and switching into her conservation lab coat, she approached the archivist. "Mrs. Patel, you'll want to adjust your hand position." Sophia demonstrated the proper technique. Even with gloves, oils can transfer through pressure points. These pages have survived nearly 400 years. Let's make sure they survive 400 more. The younger woman nodded eagerly. "Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. I keep forgetting about the pressure distribution." Sophia nodded, not unkindly. She knew her reputation for meticulousness intimidated some staff, but preservation standards couldn't be compromised. Her grandfather, who had raised her after her parents' death when she was only 5, had instilled that reverence for history in her. His voice still echoed in her mind. "History isn't just in the past, Sophia, it's alive in everything we preserve." Her assistant, Marcus, and her academic right hand arrived with a stack of folders and her morning tea, prepared exactly as she preferred it, 1 sugar, splash of milk. "You have a conference call with the Tokyo preservation team at 11, he reminded her, "and the board wants an update on the Enlightenment exhibition by end of week." His easy smile and conversational manner complemented Sophia's more reserved demeanor. He had become her bridge to the more social aspects of institutional politics. "Thanks, Marcus. I'll have the exhibition timeline finished by Wednesday." She took the tea gratefully. "Any word from the conservation suppliers about that specialized Japanese paper we need?" "It's still back-ordered, but I'm working on an alternative source." He hesitated, then added with a grin, "Oh, and Dr. Harper from Antiquities mentioned that her department is still trying to poach the document whisperer for their medieval codex project." Sophia rolled her eyes at the nickname that had followed her since graduate school, when she'd salvaged a water-damaged collection of letters that other conservatives had declared beyond saving. "Tell Eleanor that my answer hasn't changed since last month." The morning proceeded with its familiar rhythm until the mail card arrived. Among the professional journals, correspondence, and departmental memos was an unexpected package, a simple brown paper parcel with no return address. The only identification was an elegant script that read, "For the curator of forgotten things." "That's odd," Marcus commented, examining the handwriting. "No postage either. Someone must have delivered it personally." Sophia felt a strange tingling sensation as she took the package. "Let's see what we have." Her trained hands carefully unwrapped the brown paper, revealing an archival quality box that immediately piqued her professional interest. Whoever had sent this understood preservation methods. Inside, nestled in acid-free tissue, lay a letter case of worn leather, sealed with a wax impression that had somehow remained unbroken. Sophia's pulse quickened. This was no ordinary correspondence. She carried it to the examination table, donning fresh gloves before carefully breaking the seal. "Marcus, look at this." Her voice carried the hushed reverence she reserved for truly extraordinary finds. "The parchment quality is exceptional, and the ink hasn't faded significantly." She gently unfolded the letter and began to read aloud. November 16th, 1889. Royal Archaeological Society, London. To whom it may concern. I have made a discovery of such profound significance that I hesitate to commit full details to paper. My research has confirmed the existence of what has been called the Library of Lost Souls, a repository of knowledge that exists beyond the conventional understanding of time and place. Partial coordinates follow, though I dare not include the complete sequence. 57 degrees, 31 minutes north, but the longitude must be determined by the finder who is worthy. Should these coordinates be completed, the door between worlds shall open, but only when Sirius aligns with the third moon of Jupiter during the solstice. With urgent regard, Dr. William Montgomery, Royal Archaeological Society. "That's cryptic," Marcus said, leaning closer to examine the letter. "And look, there's a partial map drawn on the back of the page." Sophia carefully turned the parchment over. Sure enough, the back contained a meticulously drawn fragment of a map with strange annotations in multiple languages, some of which she couldn't immediately identify. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. There was detailed penwork that showed what appeared to be a mountainous region with markers for astronomical alignments. "I've never heard of any library of lost souls," Sophia murmured, reaching for a magnifying glass. "And this, Dr. Montgomery," she trailed off as something caught her eye in the corner of the letter. When she directed the specialized light across the page, a symbol became visible that hadn't been apparent, an elegant rendering of an open book with stars flowing from its pages. The strangest thing was that it seemed to shimmer and change when viewed from different angles, as if the ink contained some substance that refracted light unusually. Without thinking, Sophia touched the symbol with her gloved finger. A wave of dizziness washed over her, and for the briefest moment, she could have sworn she heard whispers. Multiple voices speaking words just beyond comprehension. "Are you okay?" Marcus asked, noticing her sudden pallor. Sophia blinked rapidly, the sensation already fading. "Yes, just got lightheaded for a second." She straightened up, her scientific mind already formulating questions and research approaches. "Marcus, I need you to pull everything we have on the Royal Archaeological Society circa 1889, particularly anything related to this Dr. Montgomery." "On it," he replied. "What about the exhibition timeline?" Sophia's eyes remained fixed on the letter, the mysterious symbol, and the partial map. "The exhibition can wait. Something tells me this just became our priority." As Marcus left to begin the research, Sophia carefully secured the letter in a preservation sleeve. The grand clock in the entrance hall chimed 9, announcing the library's opening to the public, but Sophia barely registered it. Her mind was already racing down pathways of historical investigation, pulled by a mystery over a century in the making. For the first time in years, Sophia felt something beyond scholarly interest, a visceral connection to a document that seemed, impossible as it was, to have been waiting specifically for her. Chapter 2. The research begins. The next morning found Sophia surrounded by open books, digital printouts, and archival photographs spread across her desk in organized chaos. She'd been at the library since dawn, having barely slept after spending most of the night researching with Dr. William Montgomery. The man who stared back at her from a sepia-toned photograph was not what she had expected. Rather than the elderly Victorian scholar she had imagined, William Montgomery had been young, mid-30s at the most, with intelligent eyes that seemed to assess the camera with the same analytical precision she recognized in herself. He stood straight-backed in formal attire beside an archaeological excavation, his serious expression softened by a hint of enthusiasm that the long exposure couldn't quite hide. "Remarkable," she whispered to herself, examining his face. He was remarkably young to have reached such prominence. According to the Royal Archaeological Society records, Dr. Montgomery had been a linguistic scholar who specialized in what he termed literary mythologies, which was the study of libraries and repositories of knowledge described in ancient texts but never confirmed to exist. His published papers were brilliantly argued, if controversial, suggesting connections between stories of mystical libraries from disparate cultures. What truly captured Sophia's attention, however, was the final entry in his personnel file. Disappeared during expedition, December 1889. The disappearance had occurred barely a month after the letter she'd received was dated. She pulled out a photocopy of his final journal entry, which had been included in a memorial publication by the Society. December 14, 1889, I stand at the threshold of the greatest discovery in human history. After years of research, the patterns have aligned. The library is not merely metaphorical, as my colleagues insist, but a physical reality that exists beyond conventional understanding of space. Tomorrow's expedition will confirm what I have long suspected and silence those who have ridiculed my work. No further entries existed. According to reports, Dr. Montgomery had departed London by train the following morning and was never seen again. His equipment was discovered near a stone circle in the Scottish Highlands, but no trace of the man himself was ever found. You found something interesting, I see. Marcus appeared with 2 coffee cups, placing one beside her. Sophia startled slightly, having been so engrossed she hadn't heard him enter. More than interesting. Dr. Montgomery wasn't just any archaeologist. He was brilliant, methodical, and vanished while pursuing exactly what was mentioned in the letter. She gestured to another file. And he wasn't the only one. She spread out several case files she had compiled overnight. Look at these patterns. Throughout history, there have been cases of scholars and researchers who disappeared after investigating what they called liminal libraries, or repositories between worlds. The Spanish explorer Alvarez in 1623, the Chinese scholar Wu Meiling in 1742, Professor Harrington from Oxford in 1912. That's disturbing, Marcus said, examining the files. More intriguing is that many disappearances coincide with specific celestial alignments. She pointed to her notes. I've been corresponding with Dr. Chen from astronomy. The alignment mentioned in Montgomery's letter, Sirius with Jupiter's 3rd moon during the solstice, it happens tonight. Tonight? Marcus looked alarmed. That's quite a coincidence. Dr. Chen says this specific alignment only occurs every 134 years. Sophia's eyes gleamed with excitement. The last time it happened was in 1889. Their conversation was interrupted by the sharp rap of knuckles against the glass door. Dr. Eleanor Harper, the library's executive director, entered without waiting for a response. In her early 60s, with steel gray hair pulled into a severe bun, she carried the intimidating presence of someone who had fought her way to the top of a male-dominated field. Sophia, I expected the exhibition layout on my desk this morning, she said without preamble, her gaze sweeping critically over the research materials that had nothing to do with the Enlightenment exhibition the board had prioritized. I'm still finalizing the thematic progression, Sophia replied, subtly shifting some papers to cover Montgomery's photograph. The spatial flow between the philosophical and scientific sections needs refinement. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. And these materials are helping with that how, exactly? Marcus tactfully excused himself, leaving Sophia to face her supervisor alone. It's a related research question that came up, Sophia hedged. I'll have your preliminary layout by tomorrow morning. See that you do. Eleanor picked up one of the papers, which was a star chart showing tonight's alignment. The board expects results, not wild goose chases after mystical libraries. We have donors expecting a world-class exhibition, not, she gestured dismissively at the research, fairy tales. After Eleanor left, Sophia exhaled slowly. She knew she should focus on the exhibition, but Dr. Montgomery's letter had awakened something in her, a scholarly hunger she hadn't felt in years. The routine of preservation and exhibition had become comfortable, but this mystery offered something more. The rest of the day passed in a blur of divided attention. Sophia dutifully worked on the exhibition plans while continuing her research into Dr. Montgomery whenever possible. She created an elaborate wall chart in her office, connecting references to the Library of Lost Souls across historical sources. Lunch was forgotten, and dinner became a sandwich eaten while examining astronomical charts. At 7 p.m., most staff had departed, but Sophia remained at her desk when her phone rang. "Dr. Jenkins? It's Chen from Astronomy." "Thanks for calling back, Maylene." Sophia put the phone on speaker as she continued examining the letter, under different light filters. "Your celestial alignment is fascinating. I confirm the calculations. Sirius will indeed align with Callisto, Jupiter's third moon, during tonight's winter solstice. The peak alignment occurs at exactly midnight." "Midnight," Sophia repeated softly. "Is there anything unusual about this particular alignment? Besides its rarity, not from an astronomical perspective." Dr. Chen paused. "But I'm curious why a manuscript curator is suddenly interested in celestial mechanics." "Just a reference in a historical document I'm researching," Sophia replied vaguely. "Thanks for confirming." After hanging up, Sophia sat back in her chair, contemplating the letter. The rational part of her brain, the disciplined scholar with a PhD and countless peer-reviewed publications, knew there was nothing magical about celestial alignments. Yet something about Dr. Montgomery's disappearance and the precision of his predictions tugged at her. The library gradually grew quieter as the evening's security rounds began. The night guard, an older man named Harold, poked his head in around 9. "Working late again, Dr. Jenkins?" he asked, his flashlight beam briefly illuminating the office. "Just finishing up some research," she replied with a small smile. "Don't stay too late. Old buildings get spooky at night," he said with a wink, before continuing his rounds. By 11:30, Sophia had set up specialized imaging equipment around the letter. The rational explanation was that certain inks could become visible under specific lighting conditions, and the alignment provided a convenient time marker for her experiment. The less rational explanation, the one she wouldn't admit to herself, was that some part of her believed Dr. Montgomery's words about doors opening between worlds. As the antique clock in the manuscript room approached midnight, Sophia adjusted the ultraviolet light over the letter. For a brief moment, she thought she saw shadows moving oddly across the room, stretching and contracting in ways that didn't match the light sources. "Just tired eyes," she murmured to herself, focusing intently on the letter as the minute hand of the clock ticked inexorably toward midnight. Chapter 3: The Crossing. As midnight approached, Sophia adjusted the specialized lighting equipment she'd positioned around Dr. Montgomery's letter. The ultraviolet illumination cast an eerie blue glow across the conservation table, transforming the familiar manuscript room into something otherworldly. She checked the time again. 11:57 p.m. "This is absurd," she muttered to herself, adjusting her digital imaging camera. "I'm a scientist, not some Victorian spiritualist holding a midnight séance." Yet she couldn't deny the acceleration of her pulse as the clock tipped closer to midnight. The rational part of her maintained that she was simply conducting an experiment in revealing hidden text, that certain inks became visible only under specific light conditions. The less rational part, the part she rarely acknowledged, whispered of possibilities beyond scientific explanation. At exactly 11:59, something changed. The ink on the letter began to shimmer, not just reflecting the ultraviolet light, but seeming to absorb and then emit its own luminescence. Sophia blinked, wondering if her eyes were playing tricks after hours of intense focus. She adjusted the camera to capture whatever was happening. "That's not possible," she whispered, as previously invisible text began to appear on the parchment. Elegant script materialized between the original lines, revealing what appeared to be additional coordinates and more detailed sections of the map. The clock struck midnight. The symbol in the corner of the letter, the book with stars flowing from its pages, suddenly blazed with blue-white intensity. Sophia instinctively stepped back as a breeze inexplicably stirred in the sealed room, rustling papers and growing stronger by the second. Books flew off nearby shelves, their pages turning rapidly as if being read by invisible hands. The wind whipped around her, documents swirling in a cyclone of paper and ink. At the center of it all, Dr. Montgomery's letter rose from the table, suspended in a column of light that pulsed with increasing brightness. "This can't be happening," Sophia gasped, her scientific mind struggling to process what her senses were experiencing. The letter hung in the air, the map now fully visible and glowing with an inner light. Without thinking, she reached for it. The moment her fingers touched the parchment, a blinding flash of blue-white light engulfed the room. Sophia felt herself falling, or perhaps flying, through endless corridors lined with bookshelves that stretched beyond possibility. Whispered voices surrounded her, speaking in languages she almost recognized but couldn't quite comprehend. Words and phrases in dozens of tongues swirled around her, ancient Greek fragments, Latin passages, and languages that sounded like nothing she'd ever heard before. The sensation lasted both an eternity and an instant. Then, abruptly, it stopped. Sophia found herself sprawled across the floor of what appeared to be the manuscript room, but it wasn't her manuscript room. The disorientation was immediate. Gas lamps instead of electric lights, wooden card catalogs where computer terminals should be, and an ornate Victorian desk replacing her modern conservation table. Her specialized equipment had vanished completely. She clutched something in her right hand. Looking down, she saw Montgomery's letter, but it was different. The paper was crisp, the ink fresh, as if newly written. The wax seal was intact, the aging and foxing that had marked its edges completely gone. Before she could process this impossibility, heavy footsteps approached from the corridor. The door, still in the same location, but now made of dark oak rather than modern glass, swung open. A man entered carrying a brass lantern, his tall figure silhouetted dramatically against the doorway. As he raised the light, Sophia's breath caught in her throat. She recognized him immediately from the photographs she'd studied all day. His serious expression, the intelligent eyes, and the formal bearing of a Victorian academician. But unlike the photographs, this version was in vivid color and unmistakably, impossibly alive. Dr. William Montgomery stared at the woman sprawled on his private research room floor with a mixture of shock and outrage. His free hand moved toward a bell pull to summon security. "Who are you, madam, and how did you get in here?" he demanded, his voice cultured but sharp with suspicion. His eyes fell to the object in her hand, and his expression darkened further. "More importantly, why are you holding my letter?" Chapter 4. Reluctant Allies. "Security! Intruder in the manuscript room!" William Montgomery's voice rang out as he kept a wary distance from Sophia, his hand still on the bell pull. The lantern light cast dramatic shadows across his face, highlighting cheekbones that the photographs hadn't captured adequately. Sophia scrambled to her feet and knew that her modern clothing, the tailored pants and a silk blouse under her conservation lab coat, immediately marked her as out of place in Victorian London. Her mind raced, academic training kicking in despite the impossible situation. Stay calm, observe, analyze. "Please, Dr. Montgomery, I can explain," she began, though she wasn't entirely sure she could. "You know my name," he noted sharply, eyes narrowing. "Are you from Blackwood's department? Has he stooped to hiring burglars now?" Before Sophia could respond, the door burst open again as an older man in a night watchman's uniform rushed in, brandishing a truncheon. "What's the trouble, Dr. Montgomery?" William gestured toward Sophia. "This woman has somehow gained access to my private research room, and she's in possession of my letter." The guard looked Sophia up and down, taking in her strange attire with obvious confusion. "How did you get in here, miss? All doors are locked at night." "That's an excellent question," William said, studying her more carefully now. "One I'm most interested in hearing answered." Sophia's mind worked furiously. The truth seemed impossible, yet lies would be quickly discovered. She opted for a version of honesty. I know this sounds impossible, but I'm from the future, and I came here because of this letter, your letter. The guard chuckled. Future? Should I fetch the police or the alienists, sir? William didn't laugh. Instead, he studied Sophia with the careful attention of a scientist observing an unexpected experimental result. Bring her to Director Winthrop's office. We'll sort this out properly. 10 minutes later, Sophia found herself seated in a mahogany chair across from William, in a richly appointed office dominated by bookshelves and taxonomical specimens in glass cases. The guard stood by the door, while William paced with controlled energy. Let's try again, William said, his tone clipped. You claim to be from the future, yet offer no proof beyond your unusual clothing and accent. You're found in my locked research room with a letter I only completed this morning and have shared with no one. He stopped pacing to fix her with a penetrating stare. A more plausible explanation is that you're employed by Professor Blackwood or another academic rival to steal my research. Sophia met his gaze steadily. I understand your skepticism, Dr. Montgomery. In your position, I'd share it. But I'm Dr. Sophia Jenkins, curator of rare manuscripts at the Bradford Historical Library. In the year 2023, 2023, William repeated flatly, and you expect me to believe you've traveled 136 years through time. I don't expect you to believe it easily, Sophia replied, but it's the truth. Last night, or rather 136 years from now, I received your letter in a mysterious package. When I examined it during the solstice alignment, something happened. She hesitated. The symbol in the corner glowed, and I was somehow brought here. William's expression remained skeptical, but Sophia noticed his eyes widen slightly at the mention of the symbol. This story is preposterous. She realized arguing about time travel was futile. Instead, she changed tactics, focusing on the letter's contents. The Library of Lost Souls exists at the convergence of all possible stories, where the written and unwritten meet. William froze mid-step. What did you say? It's a nexus point where knowledge from all times can be accessed, she continued, reciting passages from his unpublished theories she'd studied. You believe it's not just metaphorical, but exists in a physical form, accessible under specific conditions. The color drained from William's face. Those exact words are in my private journal. I've shared that theory with no one. For several long moments, William stared at her, his expression cycling through disbelief, suspicion, and something approaching scientific curiosity. Finally, he turned to the guard. You may return to your post, Giles. I'll handle this matter. Are you certain, sir, this woman could be dangerous? William's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. I believe I can manage. Please arrange for guest quarters in Mrs. Winter's lodging section to be prepared. Our visitor will be staying the night. After the guard left, William closed the door and turned to Sophia. I don't believe your story about time travel. It defies all natural laws. However, you clearly possess knowledge you shouldn't have access to. He studied her with renewed interest. We will continue this conversation tomorrow morning at my office at the Royal Archaeological Society. 9 o'clock sharp. And tonight? Sophia asked, suddenly realizing the precariousness of her situation. She was alone in Victorian London, without period-appropriate clothing, currency, or identification. Tonight you will stay in the library's guest quarters, where visiting scholars reside. I've asked Mrs. Winters, our housekeeper, to find suitable attire for you. His eyes briefly took in her modern clothing again. Whatever your game is, appearing in public dressed as you are would create a scandal neither of us needs. An hour later, after a suspicious Mrs. Winters had supplied a simple nightgown and promised appropriate day clothes for morning, Sophia found herself alone in a small but comfortable guest room. The gas lamp cast flickering shadows across unfamiliar Victorian furnishings that she would normally have examined with professional interest. Now they were simply part of her impossible reality. Sophia emptied her pockets, taking inventory of her modern possessions. Her phone, now useless without electricity or cell service, her Bradford ID card, her wallet with credit cards and 21st century currency, and a small USB drive containing research files. She laid them on the nightstand, tangible proof that she hadn't imagined her former life. The reality of her situation began to sink in. She was trapped in 1889 London with no clear way home. The sophisticated equipment that might have helped investigate the letter's properties was more than a century from being invented, and her only potential ally was a man who believed her to be either a liar or mentally unstable. Sophia clutched the letter, her only connection to her own time, and eventually fell into an exhausted sleep. Meanwhile, across London in his Kensington study, William Montgomery sat surrounded by open books, comparing his original letter with notes about his encounter with the strange woman. The precision of her knowledge troubled him deeply. Either she's a remarkably clever thief, he murmured to himself, or... He trailed off, unwilling to complete the thought. After a moment's hesitation, he reached for books rarely consulted, theoretical physics volumes and obscure texts on time anomalies. The astronomical chart on his desk, showing tonight's alignment of Sirius with Jupiter's third moon during the solstice, was identical to the one Sophia had described. William rubbed his temples, scientific curiosity warring with rational skepticism. Whatever the truth, tomorrow's meeting promised to be extraordinarily interesting. Chapter 5. The Puzzle. The following morning, Sophia stood before the imposing headquarters of the Royal Archaeological Society on Albemarle Street. The Victorian London surrounding her was both familiar from historical records and utterly foreign in its living reality. The sounds of horse-drawn carriages, the smell of coal smoke, the bustling pedestrians in their formal attire, all combining into a sensory experience no historical monograph could adequately convey. She smoothed down the borrowed dress Mrs. Winters had provided. It was a high-necked navy blue ensemble that was practical by Victorian standards, but still more restrictive than anything Sophia was accustomed to wearing. Her curly auburn hair had been tamed into a more period-appropriate style, though several stubborn locks had already escaped. "You can do this," she whispered to herself before climbing the steps. "You've lectured at Oxford. You've defended your dissertation before international experts. You can certainly handle one Victorian archaeologist." The society's interior impressed even Sophia's professional eye. Marble floors, mahogany paneling, and glass cases displayed archaeological treasures from across the British Empire. A clerk directed her to William Montgomery's office on the second floor, his expression revealing nothing about the unusual nature of this female visitor. William's office proved to be a fascinating reflection of his mind. Organized chaos, artifacts and specimens occupied every available surface, interspersed with maps, charts, and stacks of books in multiple languages. One wall was covered entirely in an elaborate diagram connecting archaeological sites worldwide with red string and notation cards. William himself stood by a large desk, examining documents. He'd exchanged last night's formal evening wear for a well-tailored day suit, and Sophia couldn't help noticing that the photographs she'd studied hadn't done justice to his presence. "Ah, Dr. Jenkins, precisely on time." He gestured to a chair. "I trust your accommodations were adequate?" "Quite comfortable, thank you," she replied, taking the offered seat. "I've been considering our unusual situation," William began without preamble. "While I maintain healthy skepticism about your claims of time travel, I cannot dismiss your knowledge of my unpublished work." He leaned forward. "So, I propose a mutual exchange of information. You tell me precisely how you came by your knowledge, and I'll share my research on the library." "That seems fair," Sophia agreed with relief, "though I maintain that the truth, however improbable, is that I am from the year 2023. For the next hour, they engaged in a careful dance of information exchange. William revealed family documents dating back centuries that referenced the Library of Lost Souls. He had journals from ancestors who had glimpsed its existence, fragmentary maps, and linguistic analyses of references across disparate cultures. In turn, Sophia provided historical knowledge about archaeological sites mentioned in William's research. It was knowledge that wouldn't be discovered until decades after 1889. The temple complex you're referencing wasn't excavated until 1927, she explained, pointing to his map. The inscriptions you've hypothesized actually exist, but they're located in the eastern chamber, not the western one as you've marked. William's expression shifted between fascination and disbelief as she continued providing details that would be impossible for a contemporary scholar to know. "If what you claim is true," he said eventually, his voice carefully controlled, "how do I mysteriously disappear in December?" Sophia hesitated, suddenly aware of the moral implications of revealing a person's future. "Historical records aren't clear," she finally said. "They only say you never returned from an expedition." William processed this information with remarkable composure. "I see. And this expedition was presumably seeking the library?" "That's the assumption, yes." A tense silence fell between them, broken when William suddenly stood and moved to a wall safe concealed behind a painting. He extracted an ornate box and placed it on the desk between them. "I've shared this with no one," he said quietly. "These are the remaining fragments that have guided my research." Inside the box lay parchment fragments, small artifacts, and, most interestingly, a partial cipher key, written in a script Sophia didn't recognize. "It's a bibliographic cipher," William explained. "Each symbol corresponds not to a letter but to a specific book and page. When combined correctly, they reveal information invisible to those without the proper references." Sophia leaned forward, professional excitement temporarily overriding her personal situation. "May I?" At his nod, she carefully examined the cipher key. Something about the pattern structure seemed familiar. "This resembles bibliographic encryption methods developed in the mid-20th century," she murmured, then looked up sharply. "Wah! Some of these reference markers don't make sense for 1889. This symbol sequence would correspond to works not yet written." William's eyes widened. "That's precisely the puzzle that's confounded me. How could a cipher system reference books that don't exist?" "Unless the library itself sent the knowledge back to you," Sophia suggested, the implications dawning on her. "If the library exists outside normal time, it could contain knowledge from all periods." For the first time since they'd met, William's skepticism seemed to truly waver. "A theoretical possibility I've considered, but found difficult to accept." Their work continued through the day and into the evening, relocating from the society to William's private library at his Kensington home. They discovered the letter contained multiple layers of encryption. Some required reference books from William's collection, and others matched texts Sophia knew from her time, but didn't yet exist in 1889. William proved to be a brilliant linguist, making intuitive connections that complemented Sophia's analytical approach. Despite their initial wariness, they fell into a surprisingly effective collaborative rhythm. "Your insight into these Sumerian variants is remarkable," William commented as evening descended. "Few scholars have your eye for dialectical nuances." "And few linguists can make the conceptual leaps you do," Sophia replied, genuinely impressed by his intellect. "Most academics are too constrained by existing paradigms." As they worked, their conversations gradually extended beyond research. William described his childhood fascination with lost knowledge. "I was the strange boy who preferred ancient texts to cricket," he admitted with a rare smile. "My father considered it a grave disappointment." "My grandfather would have approved," Sophia replied. "He raised me on stories of magical libraries. After my parents died, books became my refuge." She paused, surprised by her own openness. "I've always felt somewhat out of place in my time, or I suppose I should say, my century." William studied her face for a moment. "Perhaps that's why you're here now. If one accepts the impossible premise of time travel, it follows that the traveler might be someone who already stood slightly apart from their own time." Their eyes met briefly before both looked away, suddenly aware of something unspoken shifting between them. The breakthrough came near midnight. By combining their knowledge, they successfully decoded the complete cipher, revealing a map location in the Scottish Highlands, near an ancient stone circle. "These coordinates align with the astronomical references," William said, excitement breaking through his usual reserve. "And look, the cipher reveals the timing. The next critical alignment occurs during the winter solstice." "That's in 3 weeks," Sophia noted, calculating quickly. William nodded, gathering the papers decisively. "We'll need to travel there immediately to prepare. The Society can fund the expedition under my ongoing research grant." "We?" Sophia questioned, surprised by his inclusion. "Unless you've discovered a way back to your time that you haven't mentioned," William replied with unexpected wryness. "It seems our paths are temporarily aligned. This mystery appears to require both our perspectives to solve." Sophia looked down at the completed map they'd created together, their hands nearly touching across the parchment. Both pulled away with simultaneous awareness, but something had undeniably changed between them. Skepticism gave way to a tentative alliance built on shared intellectual passion and the extraordinary circumstances that had brought them together. Chapter 6. The Journey Begins. "I absolutely refuse to travel as your assistant," Sophia declared, arms crossed as she stood in William's study the following morning. "I'm a fully qualified curator with 2 doctorates. In my time, I run an entire department." William pinched the bridge of his nose, visibly struggling with patience. "Dr. Jenkins, I understand your frustration, but you seem determined to ignore the practical realities of 1889. A man and unmarried woman cannot simply travel together to remote locations without causing a scandal that would jeopardize the entire expedition. So, Victorian propriety trumps my professional standing." Sophia paced the room, the borrowed skirts tangling around her ankles. She stumbled slightly, further fueling her irritation with 19th century fashion. "It's not a matter of trumping anything," William replied with forced calm. "It's acknowledging that we must work within certain constraints to achieve our goal." He hesitated, then added more gently, "Your knowledge and expertise are invaluable to this expedition. I'm not questioning your qualifications." Sophia sighed, the rational part of her mind acknowledging the truth in his words, even as the feminist scholar in her rebelled. There must be a workable compromise. After considerable negotiation, they reached an arrangement. Sophia would travel as Dr. Sophia Jenkins, a scholarly widow specializing in ancient languages, under the official sponsorship of the Society. This would provide the respectability Victorian society demanded, while allowing her to maintain her professional dignity. The preparations moved quickly. William secured funding from the Society, though not without raising eyebrows about his sudden collaboration with an unknown female scholar. Travel documents were arranged, appropriate clothing was purchased, with Sophia insisting on the most practical options available for women, and research materials were compiled. 3 days later, they stood on the platform at King's Cross Station as porters loaded their substantial luggage, mostly books and research equipment, onto the Edinburgh-bound train. The station bustled with Victorian life in all its complexity. Ladies in elaborate traveling costumes supervised mountains of trunks, while gentlemen in top hats consulted pocket watches. Station workers shouted announcements as steam billowed around the massive iron engines. Sophia found herself overwhelmed by the sensory details absent from historical records. The specific smell of coal smoke and perfume, the particular quality of light through the station's glass roof, and the exact timbre of voices calling in accents that had subtly evolved by her time. "Are you unwell?" William asked, noticing her distraction. "Just processing," she replied quietly. "It's one thing to study history, it's another to stand inside it." William seemed about to respond when his attention shifted to a figure approaching from across the platform. His expression cooled noticeably. "Dr. Montgomery," called the newcomer, a tall man with a meticulously groomed beard and expensive traveling clothes. "Rushing off on another wild expedition, I see?" "Professor Blackwood," William acknowledged stiffly. I wasn't aware the society had informed others of my research plans. The society didn't need to. Word spreads when a colleague suddenly requests substantial funding. Professor Blackwood's eyes shifted to Sophia with undisguised curiosity. And acquires an unexpected research partner? William's jaw tightened. Professor Blackwood, allow me to introduce Dr. Sophia Jenkins, a visiting scholar specializing in ancient languages. Dr. Jenkins, Professor James Blackwood of Cambridge. Sophia offered a polite nod, immediately recognizing the name from her historical research. This man was William's academic rival who had publicly criticized his theories. A female doctor of ancient languages. How progressive of the society, Professor Blackwood remarked with a thin smile. His gaze lingered on Sophia in a way that made her skin crawl despite her century of feminist progress. Perhaps you'll succeed where Dr. Montgomery has failed in distinguishing between academic research and chasing fairy tales. Before either could respond, the final boarding call sounded. With curt goodbyes, they escaped to their first-class compartment, William visibly relieved to leave his rival behind. I assume that was the Professor Blackwood you mentioned when we first met, Sophia said once they were settled. William nodded grimly. My most vocal critic. He systematically attempted to discredit my research on liminal knowledge repositories. History remembers him primarily as a footnote to your work, Sophia offered, then immediately regretted it as William's eyebrows rose. Does it indeed? A brief, satisfied smile crossed his face before he composed himself. We should focus on the journey ahead. As the train pulled away from London, Sophia watched the city gradually give way to the countryside. The same landscape she knew, yet fundamentally different. Undeveloped fields where estates would eventually stand, pristine rivers not yet redirected by modern engineering, and forests that would later be cleared. The journey north provided its own challenges. While the first-class accommodations were comfortable by Victorian standards, Sophia struggled with the practical realities of 19th-century travel. The constant soot from the coal engines, the restrictive clothing that made every movement a conscious effort, and the rigid etiquette governing every interaction. When a gentleman in the dining car made a condescending remark about ladies presuming to study subjects beyond their comprehension, Sophia nearly delivered a scathing lecture on gender equality before William's warning glance stopped her. No respectable woman would speak so directly to a gentleman about theoretical physics, Mrs. Jenkins, he murmured once they were alone again, though she detected a hint of amusement beneath his admonishment. Where I come from, Dr. Montgomery, women run laboratories and universities, she replied tartly. To her surprise, he considered this thoughtfully. I find I can envision such a world quite easily when observing your approach to scholarship. Their journey hit an unexpected obstacle near the Scottish border when a landslide blocked the tracks, forcing an overnight stay in a small market town. The local inn had limited accommodations, resulting in adjacent rooms with thin walls and a shared sitting area. That evening, they worked by lamplight on the cipher's remaining puzzles. The close quarters and focused collaboration created an unexpected intimacy as they passed books back and forth, their fingers occasionally brushing. My family has tracked references to the library for generations, William revealed as the night grew late. My great-grandfather found the first fragments in Egypt in 1803. My father expanded the research through diplomatic connections across Europe. When he died, the responsibility fell to me. It became your legacy, Sophia observed. William nodded. More than that, it became my purpose. He hesitated before adding, Few understand that kind of intellectual devotion. I do, Sophia said quietly. My grandfather used to say that true scholars aren't just studying the past. They're in conversation with it. There was an unexpected connection in that moment. Two dedicated scholars separated by time, yet united by purpose, hung in the air between them, before William cleared his throat and returned to the documents. The weather worsened as they journeyed into the highlands. 2 days later, they found themselves caught in a sudden storm while traveling by hired carriage between villages. The wind howled across the moors, driving rain against the windows with such force that the driver was forced to stop. "There's a crofter's cottage ahead, sir," the driver shouted over the gale. "Abandoned these past years, but the roof was sound last I passed." The cottage proved to be a simple stone structure with a partially collapsed roof in one section, but a sturdy main room. William and Sophia worked together to secure the space. He repaired a broken shutter while she efficiently organized their supplies and built a fire in the small hearth. "You're remarkably capable in practical matters," William observed as she successfully coaxed flames from the damp kindling. "Archaeology fieldwork requires adaptability," she replied. "My time's gender expectations may be different, but the principles of survival aren't." As they warmed themselves by the fire, their wet outer garments hanging nearby to dry, the storm continued to rage outside. The enforced proximity and shared adversity seemed to dissolve some of the period-appropriate formality that had persisted between them. Working by firelight on the translated texts, Sophia suddenly noticed something unusual in the letter. "William, look at this. Hold it up to the light." He moved closer, bringing the parchment near the flames as she directed. Watermarks previously invisible became apparent in the firelight. There were intricate symbols embedded in the paper itself. Celtic knotwork combined with Egyptian ankh variations, William breathed, his scholarly excitement palpable. These symbols appear in ancient texts describing time distortion. "And look how they're arranged," Sophia pointed out, her shoulder now pressing against his as they hunched over the document. "This circular pattern matches architectural elements I've studied in megalithic ruins. They are often associated with astronomical alignments and temporal theories." "Time," William's voice grew hushed. "Not just a library that collects knowledge, but one that exists outside normal time constraints entirely." "That would explain how it connects different periods," Sophia added, the implications dawning on her. "It's not just a repository of books, but a nexus point in time itself." Their eyes met, the shared realization electric between them. Neither could have reached this conclusion alone. It required both their perspectives, centuries apart yet now impossibly united. The moment stretched, their faces illuminated by flickering firelight, academic excitement gradually shifting into something more personal as they recognized the unique connection they'd formed. "In just a few days, you've helped me understand what I've been studying my entire life," William said softly. Before Sophia could respond, a sudden gust rattled the repaired shutter, breaking the moment. They both pulled back slightly, returning to the documents with renewed focus but a new awareness of each other. As the storm continued through the night, they eventually succumbed to exhaustion, falling asleep on opposite sides of the fire. Yet as the embers died down to a soft glow, they had unconsciously shifted to face each other, two scholars from different times, connected by a mystery that spanned centuries. Chapter 7. Between Worlds. The highland village of Kilmoran appeared through the morning mist like something from a fairy tale. Stone cottages with thatched roofs clustered around an ancient church, and smoke rose from chimneys into the crisp December air. Beyond the village stood the jagged ruins of what had once been a monastery, its remaining walls silhouetted against the gray sky. As their hired trap approached, Sophia noticed something odd about the villagers' reactions. Rather than the typical curiosity directed at strangers, the locals regarded them with knowing glances. An elderly woman crossing their path actually nodded as if expecting them. "They're watching us," Sophia murmured to William. "Rural communities are often wary of outsiders," he replied, though he too seemed unsettled by the reception. They took rooms at the village's only inn, a sturdy stone building that had served travelers for centuries. The innkeeper, a burly man named McTavish, showed no surprise at their arrival. "Scholars, are ye? Here for the old monastery?" he asked, his Scottish burr thick but understandable. "Been some time since your kind visited." William exchanged a glance with Sophia. "Our kind?" "Seekers," the man replied cryptically. "Those who come asking about the old books and stranger things." Later that afternoon, they visited the village elder, a white-haired woman named Agnes, who lived in a cottage filled with dried herbs and ancient books. Her sharp eyes assessed them from a face deeply lined by time. "I wondered when new ones would come," she said without preamble. "The signs have been strong these past months." William leaned forward with curiosity. "What signs specifically?" "Lights in the monastery when no one's there, books opening themselves in the night, the standing stones singing when the stars align." She fixed them with a penetrating stare. "The library ye seek finds you, not t'other way around." Sophia felt a chill despite the fire crackling in the hearth. "You know about the library?" Agnes smiled, revealing surprisingly strong teeth. "Our people have guarded its threshold for generations. Not everyone who seeks it is worthy to find it." She directed them to a particular section of the monastery ruins, with specific instructions on timing. "When the sun touches the western tower at midday, what is hidden becomes visible, but only to those the library has called." The following morning, they made their way to the monastery ruins. Centuries of highland weather had reduced most of the structure to crumbling walls, yet certain sections remained mysteriously intact, as if preserved by something beyond natural forces. "The architecture is a fascinating blend of Celtic and Romanesque influences," Sophia observed professionally, though her scholarly detachment was betrayed by the excitement in her voice. As the winter sun reached its zenith, they positioned themselves where Agnes had directed. William held out the map from the letter, aligning it with the physical landscape. Sophia gasped as previously invisible markings on the stone wall before them began to glow with a faint blue luminescence. "It's reacting to the letter," William whispered, moving the parchment closer to the wall. The glow intensified, revealing the outline of a doorway where solid stone had appeared to be. William pressed his hand against the wall, and to their astonishment, it passed through what now seemed to be merely an illusion of stone. Beyond lay a perfectly preserved library chamber, illuminated by light sources neither could identify. "Impossible," Sophia breathed as they cautiously entered. This space couldn't physically exist within the monastery's original dimensions. The chamber contained bookshelves stretching from floor to ceiling, filled with volumes in countless languages. Some Sophia recognized, like ancient Greek, Latin, and Sanskrit, while others used writing systems neither scholar had ever encountered. Most astonishing were the publication dates visible on some volumes. Sophia pulled down a book bound in unfamiliar material to find "Published London 2018" on its copyright page. "William," she called, her voice unsteady. "These books, some haven't been written yet." For days they lost themselves in research, discovering works spanning centuries, some from the distant past and others from futures yet to unfold. They found references to the library in texts from diverse cultures and time periods, all describing it as a nexus point connecting different eras. In one ancient scroll, they discovered a diagram depicting the library as a central point, with lines radiating outward to different time periods. The accompanying text, which Sophia translated from a rare Mesopotamian dialect, described the library as existing between moments where all times touch. It's not simply a collection of books, William realized as they compiled their findings. It's a place where time itself converges. A monk's journal from the 13th century contained descriptions of scholars from time yet to come who appeared periodically to consult the library's holdings. His detailed observations included mentions of strange devices and clothing that Sophia recognized as belonging to various future periods, including her own. Their work brought them into constant proximity, reaching for the same volumes or hunching over shared texts in the limited light. Sophia became acutely aware of William in these moments. The intent focus in his eyes when he was translating, the careful precision of his hands when he was handling fragile documents. and his increasing tendency to ask for her opinion before forming conclusions. One afternoon, while examining a particularly ancient text stored high on a shelf, the worn step beneath Sophia's foot crumbled. She would have fallen if William hadn't caught her, his hands steady at her waist. The moment of contact lingered longer than necessary, both of them suddenly aware of their close proximity. "Thank you," she murmured, finding it difficult to step away. "Of course," he replied, his voice unusually soft. His hands remained at her waist a moment longer before he reluctantly released her. That evening, working by candlelight in the monastery library, Sophia caught William watching her as she translated a complex passage. Rather than looking away, he held her gaze. "Your approach to linguistic analysis is remarkable," he said. "You see patterns I would have missed." "We make a good team," she replied, the simple statement carrying more weight than intended. Their research took an unexpected turn the following day, when William discovered a hidden mechanism in one of the library's stone walls. A section of bookshelf swung outward to reveal a previously concealed chamber, its walls covered in inscriptions and diagrams. "These depict the library's fundamental nature," William explained as they studied the ancient markings. "Look here. These are timelines showing how different periods connect through this place." Sophia traced a particular inscription with her finger. "This says, 'When worlds meet, worlds merge. The seekers who find the threshold must choose separate paths or one new way.'" Below the text were illustrations showing two distinct timelines, gradually merging into a single altered reality. "William, I think this is warning us," Sophia said slowly. "If we fully manifest the library, complete whatever ritual or process it requires, we might create an entirely new timeline." "A merger of our two periods," William murmured, studying the diagrams with increasing concern. Their eyes met across the ancient chamber, both recognizing the implications. This wasn't merely about finding a mystical library or solving an academic puzzle. They were potentially on the verge of altering reality itself. "If we find it, we change everything, not just for us," Sophia said quietly. William nodded, his expression grave. "We need to understand exactly what we're dealing with before proceeding further." He carefully copied the inscriptions into his journal. "The solstice is in 3 days. We should return to the village and review what we've learned." As they left the hidden library chamber, neither spoke of the growing connection between them, a bond complicated not only by Victorian social conventions, but now by the knowledge that their quest might have consequences far beyond their personal realms. Chapter 8: Hard Truths. Dawn found Sophia alone in her room at the village inn, writing furiously in a journal she'd purchased in Edinburgh. The simple act of recording her thoughts helped maintain her sanity in this impossible situation. She was a 21st-century scholar trapped in 1889, pursuing a mystical library with a Victorian archaeologist who was supposed to disappear within a matter of weeks. The quill pen felt awkward compared to her familiar laptop or even a ballpoint, yet another reminder of her displacement. She paused, watching the morning light illuminate dust motes floating in the chilly air. "What am I doing?" she wrote. "Every principle of temporal theory, assuming such theories have merit, suggests I should avoid changing the established timeline. If William Montgomery disappeared in December 1889, according to historical records, should I be trying to prevent that? Or is his disappearance actually his discovery of the library, a journey I'm now facilitating?" She tapped the pen against her chin, ink spotting the page as she confronted the truth she'd been avoiding. "I'm developing feelings for him that go beyond scholarly appreciation. His brilliance, his dedication, and that rare ability to see beyond conventional thinking. They are qualities that would make him exceptional in any century. And something more. There is a connection I've never experienced with anyone in my time. Is that clouding my judgment? Would I risk altering history to prevent his disappearance?" Sophia closed the journal with a snap, unsettled by her own thoughts. She carefully tucked it into her bag alongside her modern possessions, items she kept hidden from the innkeeper and other villagers. Unknown to Sophia, William had been conducting his own investigation. Troubled by inconsistencies in her story and behavior, he had begun systematically analyzing her strange mannerisms, unfamiliar phrases, and knowledge that seemed impossible for a contemporary scholar to possess. While Sophia met with Agnes to learn more about local legends, William had carefully examined her belongings. His scientific mind demanded evidence for her extraordinary claims, even as part of him had already begun to accept the impossible. In Sophia's room, he had found sketches she'd made of devices he couldn't identify. There were rectangular objects with glass faces, machines that captured images instantly without chemical processing, and detailed notes on digital preservation techniques. Most damning, or confirming, depending on perspective, was an identification card that had fallen from her journal. It was a plastic rectangle bearing her photograph, the words Bradford Historical Library, and an expiration date of 2024. That evening, he confronted her as they worked in a private parlor the innkeeper had provided for their research. "Explain this," William said without preamble, placing her ID card on the table between them. Sophia froze, color draining from her face as she recognized the object. "Where did you get that?" "It fell from your journal." His tone remained controlled, but his eyes betrayed his agitation. "Bradford Historical Library. Dr. Sophia Jenkins, Access Level, Director. Expires 2024. Sophia sat heavily in her chair, realizing the moment of reckoning had arrived. "You searched my belongings after you retired last night. A violation of privacy, I admit, but necessary given the extraordinary nature of your claims." He remained standing, too restless to sit. "This object is unlike anything I've ever encountered. The material, the printing method, even your image captured with impossible clarity." For a long moment, Sophia said nothing, weighing her options. Finally, she reached into her bag and withdrew her smartphone. "This is a telephone," she said quietly, "but it's also a camera, a library of books, a telegraph system that connects to people worldwide instantly, and 100 other things. In my time, most people carry one." William took the device cautiously, examining it with scientific precision. No visible mechanical elements, no wires. "It's powered by electricity stored in batteries," she explained. "The screen is made of materials not yet invented in your time." What followed was a 3-hour interrogation as William systematically tested her claims about the future. He demanded specific details about archaeological discoveries that hadn't yet happened, technological developments, and historical events. Sophia described the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, the structure of DNA, nuclear energy, space travel to the moon, and the internet. She detailed archaeological findings at sites William knew were still unexcavated, providing specifics only a genuine expert could know. His questions grew increasingly precise, probing for inconsistencies or misinformation that would reveal deception. Finding none, his skepticism gradually transformed into reluctant acceptance. "Your story is impossible," he finally said, pacing before the fireplace. "Yet it explains everything about you, your knowledge, your mannerisms, even your occasional confusion with our customs." He stopped, facing her directly. "You truly are from another time." Sophia nodded, relief washing over her. "I've been telling the truth from the beginning." "But this creates more questions than it answers," William continued, scientific curiosity overtaking his initial shock. "How did you travel through time? Why specifically to my letter and this moment? Is your presence here intentional or accidental?" "I believe the library somehow connected us across time," Sophia said. "The letter was the conduit, but the connection existed before that. Why else would a curator from 2023 receive a letter written by you in 1889? William nodded slowly, processing this theory. Then he asked the question Sophia had been dreading. You mentioned I disappear in the historical record. What precisely happens to me? The moment had come. After taking a deep breath, Sophia told him what she knew. In December 1889, you embark on an expedition to find the library. According to historical records, you never return. Your equipment is found near a stone circle in the highlands, but no trace of you is ever discovered. William absorbed this information with remarkable composure, turning to stare into the fire for several long moments. So in seeking this library, I may have found it and never returned to this time. Or you may have died trying to find it, Sophia added quietly. The records don't say. After this revelation, William withdrew, excusing himself to walk alone through the village. Sophia remained by the fire, fearing she had destroyed their connection by revealing too much. The hours stretched painfully as she waited, wondering if he would return at all. Near midnight, she heard footsteps approaching her door, followed by a soft knock. Opening it, she found William standing in the dim hallway, his expression resolute. "I've been considering what you told me," he said without preamble, "about my disappearance. I'm sorry if—" He raised a hand to stop her apology. "No. The information, while disturbing, is valuable. Knowledge always is, regardless of its personal implications." He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "If finding this library means my disappearance from this time, perhaps that's as it should be. Some discoveries are worth any price. But all great explorers face risks," he continued with quiet intensity. "I chose this path long before you arrived, Sophia." It was the first time he had used her given name without her title, the intimacy of it hanging in the air between them. Despite the emotional turmoil, or perhaps because of it, William made a crucial breakthrough that night. As they worked side by side, he combined astronomical calculations with linguistic patterns they'd discovered in the monastery library. "These stellar references aren't merely symbolic," he explained, his academic passion temporarily overriding personal concerns. "They're navigational markers. When combined with the language patterns, piece by piece, the complete map emerged, showing the final location at an ancient stone circle aligned with specific stars, less than a day's journey from their current location. We have 3 days until the solstice alignment," William said, his finger tracing the route. "Then we'll find our answers, whatever they may be." Their hands met over the completed map, and this time, neither pulled away. The touch was brief but deliberate, an acknowledgement of something that had been growing between them, a connection that transcended time, scholarship, and the impossible circumstances that had brought them together. Chapter 9. The Final Piece. They departed at first light, traveling on horseback across increasingly wild highland terrain. The December landscape was harsh but beautiful. Frost-covered heather stretched across wind-swept moors, distant mountains capped with early snow, and ancient forests that had stood sentinel for centuries. Sophia, despite years of theoretical knowledge about the historical geography, found herself unprepared for the physical reality of traversing this land without modern roads or vehicles. Though she'd ridden horses during undergraduate archaeology expeditions, the side saddle position required by Victorian propriety added an extra challenge. "The landscape feels different here," she observed as they paused to rest the horses near a stream. "Almost fluid somehow." William nodded, his scientific mind cataloging the anomalies. "The boundary between times is growing thinner. Look there." He pointed to where a patch of hillside momentarily shimmered, briefly showing the same location covered in snow, then returned to its frost-dusted state. "Time bleeding through," Sophia murmured, "just like the monastery library." The weather shifted unpredictably as they traveled. Sunshine gave way to rain and then cleared again within minutes. Compass needles spun erratically, forcing them to navigate by landmarks and the stars when visible. By late afternoon, they crested a final hill to find their destination spread below them. A perfect circle of standing stones set in a shallow valley, each megalith nearly twice human height and positioned with mathematical precision. Unlike famous sites like Stonehenge, This circle remained in its original, complete formation, untouched by modern intervention. "Remarkable preservation," William commented as they approached. "Most stone circles have been disturbed by farmers or treasure hunters over the centuries. Perhaps it's been protected by the same forces that preserve the library," Sophia suggested. They made camp in a nearby cave, larger than it appeared from outside and showing signs of previous habitation. Ancient markings covered the walls. Spirals, stars, and symbols matched those from the letter and monastery inscriptions. "Look at these," Sophia called, examining a particular section of wall. "These are journal entries, in different handwritings and languages, spanning centuries." William joined her, holding up a lantern. "Visitors to the circle," he confirmed, translating a Latin passage. "This one's from 1472, a scholar from Florence describing the doorway between moments." Through the evening, they discovered accounts from seekers throughout history. Some described successful encounters with the library, while others recorded only failure and confusion. The stories confirm their growing understanding of the library's nature and their fears about its effects on reality. "Listen to this," Sophia said, translating from medieval French. "When I completed the ritual with my companion from the future world, our times merged into one new river of days. Those we left behind still exist, but their paths flow differently now." "And here," Willem added, finding a passage in ancient Greek, "the library requires two souls whose minds align, but whose times differ. Only through their union can the knowledge bridge be made material." As the implications became clearer, a heavy silence fell between them. The responsibility weighing on their decision was immense, far beyond personal discovery or academic achievement. "If we complete the ritual during tomorrow's solstice," Sophia said slowly, "we would create a new merged timeline, a reality combining elements of 1889 and 2023, and all points between," William added. "Our original worlds would be fundamentally altered. People from both times would exist in this new composite reality," Sophia continued, thinking through the implications. "But their lives would follow different paths than in our original timelines. Neither world would be exactly as we knew it," William concluded grimly. They sat before the fire, the enormity of their potential actions settling between them like a physical presence. Outside, the wind whistled through the standing stones, creating an eerie melody that seemed to underscore the gravity of their situation. "Is it right for us to alter countless lives across time for our discovery?" William finally asked, his voice barely audible above the fire's crackling. "If we walk away, the library remains hidden," Sophia replied. "But at what cost to knowledge, to understanding, everything we've both dedicated our lives to preserving and discovering?" William stared into the flames. "And what of us? If we part now, you return to your time, I to mine, never meeting." "But if we stay," Sophia countered, "we fundamentally change both our worlds without consent from anyone else." The debate continued as night deepened, both scholars grappling with the ethics, implications, and personal dimensions of their choice. As they argued the philosophical and moral aspects, the emotional undercurrent became increasingly difficult to ignore. "In just these few weeks," William said during a lull in the debate, his voice softer than before, "you've become more important to me than anyone." Sophia met his gaze across the firelight. "I've never felt I belonged in my time as much as I belong here with you." Neither spoke the word love, but its meaning hung in the air between them. There was an impossible connection across centuries that somehow felt more real than any relationship either had experienced in their own times. Morning brought no easy answers, but it did bring a decision. After watching the dawn break over the stone circle, they agreed to proceed as planned. "We'll visit the circle during the solstice alignment," William said. "We'll see what the library shows us before making our final choice." They spent the day in preparation, reviewing their translations, clarifying their understanding of the required astronomical alignments, and gathering the artifacts their research suggested would be necessary for the ritual. As sunset approached, they stood together at the cave entrance, watching the stone circle outlined against the darkening sky. For the first time since meeting, they allowed themselves to fully acknowledge the connection that had formed between them, not just scholarly respect or shared intellectual passion, but something deeper. "Whatever happens tomorrow," William said quietly, taking Sophia's hand in his. "I'm grateful time brought you to me." Sophia's fingers tightened around his. Perhaps that was the point all along. Not just finding the library, but finding each other. As twilight deepened into night, they remained side by side, hands clasped, watching as stars appeared above the ancient stones. The same stars that had witnessed countless human journeys, discoveries, and connections across the vast span of time, they now bridged together. Chapter 10: The Library of Lost Souls. The solstice dawn arrived with ethereal beauty. Pale light crept across the highland landscape as the mist swirled unnaturally around the stone circle. Sophia and William approached solemnly, carrying their research materials and the letter, now confirmed as the key to accessing the library. "The air feels different," Sophia murmured as they stepped between two of the towering megaliths. The sensation was subtle but unmistakable. There was a slight resistance, as if moving through water rather than air. "Look," William pointed to where the ground appeared to shimmer between certain stones. "Temporal distortion, just as the text described." As they watched, brief glimpses of the circle in different times flashed around them. The stones newly erected with ancient people gathered in ceremony. The same location covered in deeper snow during what appeared to be a medieval winter. The circle surrounded by archaeological equipment from what Sophia recognized as mid-20th century excavation techniques. "Time isn't linear here," she whispered. "It's layered, like pages in a book." William consulted his astronomical charts. "The alignment begins in 30 minutes. We should prepare." Following the instructions pieced together from their research, they began the ritual. William carefully placed the letter in a small indentation at the center stone's base. There was a depression that matched the folded parchment perfectly, as if created specifically for it. Sophia arranged specific artifacts they'd brought at cardinal points around the circle, according to the star patterns depicted in the monastery inscriptions. As the sun reached precise alignment with the easternmost stone, its light struck the center stone where the letter rested. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, gradually, the parchment began to glow with the same blue-white light Sophia had witnessed during her original time travel. The ground beneath them trembled. The standing stones vibrated with tangible energy, emitting a low harmonic tone that seemed to resonate with something deep within both scholars. "It's working," William breathed, his voice filled with wonder and trepidation. Between two of the tallest stones, the air began to shimmer more intensely, coalescing into what could only be described as a doorway of light. Through this impossible portal, they glimpsed endless shelves of books, stretching in all directions, far more than could physically fit within the stone circle. William and Sophia exchanged a single glance, equal parts fear and exhilaration. Then they reached for each other's hands. Together, they stepped through the doorway. The transition was both jarring and strangely gentle. One moment they stood on the frosted highland grass, the next they found themselves in a vast space that defied architectural possibility. Above them soared a ceiling that combined elements of Gothic cathedral vaulting with geometric patterns from Islamic architecture and structural principles that appeared entirely futuristic. Beneath their feet, the floor shifted from ancient stone to polished marble to materials neither could identify. "Impossible," William whispered, his academic composure momentarily shattered by wonder. "It's adapting to us," Sophia observed as the space around them subtly changed, incorporating elements from both their periods. "It's responding to our presence and expectation." Bookshelves stretched in all directions, filled with volumes both recognizable and utterly alien. Ancient scrolls shared space with leather-bound tomes, modern hardcovers, and strange crystal devices that somehow contained text. The organization initially appeared chaotic, but as they explored further, patterns emerged. Knowledge arranged, not by time of creation, but by conceptual relationships that transcended chronological boundaries. "These books were never written in our world," William said, as he examined a shelf of volumes with reverent care. The section before him contained what appeared to be alternative versions of known works with different endings. Histories documented events that never occurred, and scientific texts described principles undiscovered in either of their timelines. Sophia found herself drawn to another section, where biographies lined the shelves. To her astonishment, she discovered these documented not just actual lives, but potential paths. Each individual was represented by multiple volumes, showing different possible life trajectories. With trembling hands, she pulled down a book with her own name on the spine. Opening it revealed her life story, but not precisely as she had lived it. This version showed a Sophia who had chosen a different graduate program, married a colleague, and never became the Bradford's curator. She replaced it and found another version, then another, each depicting a different possible path her life might have taken. "William," she called, her voice unsteady, "I think these are all potential realities." Before he could respond, the air before them shimmered, coalescing into a figure that seemed to shift between appearances. Sometimes it appeared as an ancient wise woman with silver hair, sometimes as a being of pure light with geometrical patterns swirling within its form, and sometimes resembling a futuristic entity with features that seemed both human and not. "I am the keeper of stories," the entity said, its voice neither male nor female but harmonic and multi-layered. "Guardian of what is, what was, and what might be. We have awaited your arrival, William Montgomery and Sophia Jenkins." "You know us?" William stated, finding his voice despite his astonishment. "All who seek the library are known to it," the keeper replied. "Few find the threshold. Fewer still are compatible enough to manifest it fully." "Compatible?" Sophia questioned. "The library exists in potential form across all times," the keeper explained, gesturing to the endless shelves surrounding them. "But it cannot fully manifest in reality without two seekers whose minds and hearts align, one from each side of the temporal divide." "You've been calling to both of us," William realized, "across time." The keeper's form shifted, becoming momentarily more substantial. "The library has existed since knowledge itself began. It preserves all possibilities, all stories, all knowledge, even that which was lost or never fully realized. But it requires conscious minds to give it form, in any particular reality. And we are those minds for our respective times," Sophia concluded. "Yes, only those whose minds and hearts align can fully manifest the library in reality." The keeper's form expanded, encompassing more of the space around them. "Now you face the choice that all true seekers must confront." The air before them transformed into a viewing portal, showing multiple timelines flowing like rivers of light. "If you choose to manifest the library fully, your original timelines will merge," the keeper explained as the streams of light in the portal combined into a single, stronger flow. "A new reality will form, combining elements of both your worlds." The portal shifted to show glimpses of this potential merged world. Victorian architecture with modern elements, technologies developed along different paths than either had known, and familiar faces living slightly altered lives. "If you choose to part, you will return to your separate times with your memories intact," the keeper continued, as the light streams separated again in the portal. "The library will remain in potential form, waiting for another pair of seekers." William and Sophia stood transfixed before the portal, witnessing the momentous choice before them: separate lives in their original times, or a shared existence in a fundamentally altered reality. "Before you decide," the keeper said, the voice softening slightly. "Explore what might be. Knowledge should precede choice." With those words, the entity faded, leaving them alone amidst the infinite knowledge of the library of lost souls. Before them, the portal remained, showing the merged timeline that might come to exist and the world they would create if they chose to remain together. Chapter 11. The Choice. The portal before them expanded, inviting closer inspection of the potential merged world. Hand in hand, William and Sophia stepped forward, finding themselves in what seemed to be a viewing gallery and able to observe but not interact with the reality displayed. London appeared first, a fascinating blend of Victorian grandeur and modern innovation. Steam-powered vehicles shared cobblestone streets with conveyances utilizing cleaner energy sources. The architecture maintained 19th-century elegance while incorporating materials and design elements from Sophia's time. People dressed in clothing that combined Victorian silhouettes with more practical and comfortable elements. "It's beautiful," Sophia whispered, as they witnessed familiar landmarks in this altered state. The worst excesses of industrialization seem to have been avoided. "Yet the scientific progress remains," William noted, watching what appeared to be an early form of telecommunications being used in a public square. Different paths to similar destinations. The scenes shifted to show people they recognized from their respective lives. William's colleagues from the Royal Archaeological Society worked alongside researchers Sophia knew from her century. Family members from both times lived altered but recognizable lives. "Everyone we know would still exist," Sophia observed, "but their lives would follow different paths. Some better, some perhaps worse," William replied. "That's what troubles me most. What right do we have to change the course of countless lives?" "But the library would preserve all knowledge across time," Sophia countered, gesturing to the infinite collections surrounding them. "Think of what humanity might accomplish with access to this repository." As they debated, the keeper reappeared, its form now stabilized as a scholarly figure with ageless features. "Your concerns honor you both," it said. "Few seekers question the ethics of their choice so deeply." "Is any discovery worth altering the fates of everyone we know?" William asked directly. "If we walk away, do we doom future generations to losing this knowledge?" Sophia added. The keeper gestured, changing the portal's view. "See your own fates if you choose separate paths." The scene shifted to show William continuing his search alone after Sophia's departure. In midwinter, he discovered part of the library's secret, but lacked the complementary knowledge Sophia provided. The vision showed him trapped between worlds, neither fully in 1889 nor completely outside time, existing as a spectral figure in the monastery library, forever seeking what he could no longer find. For Sophia, the portal revealed a return to 2023 with full knowledge of her journey. Her career flourished as she incorporated subtle insights from her time in the past, but personal fulfillment eluded her. The vision showed her growing increasingly isolated, haunted by memories of a Victorian archaeologist and the library they had glimpsed together. "And if we choose to stay together?" William asked, his voice uncharacteristically unsteady. The keeper changed the portal again to reveal their potential shared future. They worked together as custodians of the manifested library, making its knowledge selectively available to worthy scholars from across the newly merged timeline. The vision showed them aging together, respected for their work in preserving and interpreting the library's contents. As they watched, the space around them began to fluctuate, shelves shifting position as temporal energies surged. "The solstice alignment peaks soon," the keeper warned. "You must decide. The gateway will close with the alignment's end." Through windows that materialized in the library's walls, they could see both their original times experiencing disturbances. Books flew from the shelves in Sophia's modern library. Papers swirled inexplicably around William's Victorian study, clocks in both periods spinning erratically. "Time seeks resolution," the keeper explained, The pathway between your periods cannot remain open indefinitely. Sophia turned to William, suddenly needing to articulate what had been building between them since their first meeting. In just weeks, you've become the other half of my scholarly soul, she said, her academic reserve finally cracking. I've searched my entire career for someone who understands knowledge the way you do. William took both her hands in his. I've never belonged anywhere the way I belong with you, he admitted. Even before you appeared, I felt out of step with my time. I was too focused on ideas others couldn't comprehend and too driven by questions others wouldn't ask. Their first kiss was tentative, a gentle meeting of lips amid the swirling temporal energies of the library. When they parted, both understood that whatever choice they made, it must serve more than just their personal desires. If we manifest the library, William said slowly, we take responsibility for changing countless lives without their consent. But if we walk away, Sophia countered, we potentially deprive humanity of knowledge that could advance understanding across all fields. A philosopher's dilemma, William noted with a sad smile. The needs of the many weighed against the right of each individual to determine their own fate. The library trembled around them, books shaking on shelves as the alignment reached its critical point. The keeper reappeared, its form fluctuating more dramatically. You must choose now, it urged. The gateway can no longer be maintained. Before them appeared 3 doorways, one leading back to 1889 London, another to 2023, and the third to the merged world they had witnessed. Each pulsed with different energy, windows into 3 possible futures. William and Sophia stood at the threshold of decision, the culmination of their extraordinary journey hanging in the balance. The rational, scholarly parts of their minds, calculated implications and ethics. The human, emotional aspects weighed connection against responsibility. Whatever we choose, William said finally, we choose together. Sophia nodded, tears in her eyes but resolution in her expression. Their decision made, but not yet revealed, they clasped hands and stepped toward one of the portals, the library of lost souls shimmering around them one final time as their choice was sealed. Epilogue. 5 years had passed since the winter solstice that had changed everything. Spring sunshine streamed through the stained glass windows of the Bradford Montgomery collection, illuminating the grand reading room where scholars from across the world came to consult its unique holdings. Sophia Jenkins Montgomery moved between the tables, offering guidance to a visiting researcher struggling with a particularly challenging text. Her curly auburn hair, now streaked with a few strands of silver, was styled in a practical arrangement that blended Victorian elegance with modern practicality, much like the world around her. Try examining the marginalia, she suggested, pointing to faded notations. Sometimes the comments reveal more than the main text. The young scholar nodded gratefully. Thank you, Dr. Jenkins Montgomery. Your collection's organization is remarkable. I've never seen anything that bridges disciplines so effectively. Sophia smiled, glancing toward the private archives where her husband worked with another visitor. William looked up at that precise moment, as if sensing her attention, and returned the smile with one of his own, still reserved in public but containing a warmth only she fully recognized. The world they had chosen had evolved into something neither could have fully predicted. Their decision to manifest the library had indeed created a merged timeline. Victorian foundations blended with accelerated progress in fields like medicine, environmental science, and education. Gender equality had developed decades earlier, while technology had followed cleaner, more sustainable paths than in Sophia's original timeline. Their home, a short walk from the collection, reflected this merged reality. Victorian architectural details housed modern conveniences. Bookshelves contained volumes from both their original periods, and photographs showed altered versions of people they had known in their separate times. That evening, as they walked home through streets that combined cobblestones with modern lighting, William took Sophia's hand in a gesture that had become natural over the years. Professor Chen's team believes they've deciphered the Mesopotamian temporal theory tablets, he said. They're requesting access to the restricted section next week. I'll review their credentials, Sophia replied, though I trust Mei Ling's judgment. She's been a responsible researcher since the beginning. Their conversation paused as they reached their front garden, where their 4-year-old daughter Eleanor, named after Sophia's grandfather Edward, played with a picture book beneath an apple tree, her nanny nearby. As they watched, the pages momentarily shimmered with the familiar blue-white light they remembered from the library. She's showing signs already, William observed quietly. Sophia nodded. The library always finds those meant to protect it. Eleanor looked up, her features a perfect blend of both parents, and waved excitedly. Mama, Papa, my book is telling secrets again. Later, after putting their daughter to bed with stories from both their original times, Sophia and William stood before the framed letter that had brought them together, which was now displayed on their study wall. The once magical parchment had faded to normal, its supernatural properties dormant since the day of their choice. Do you ever wonder about the worlds we left behind? William asked, his arm around Sophia's waist. They're still here, she replied, leaning against him, just woven into this one. Nothing is truly lost. That's what the library taught us. William nodded thoughtfully. A fitting lesson for two curators who devoted their lives to preservation. Outside their window, the evening star appeared in a sky that had witnessed human history across countless iterations. Inside, surrounded by books and artifacts from multiple timelines, Sophia and William Jenkins Montgomery, two scholars separated by time but united by purpose, stood together in the world they had helped create, guardians of knowledge that transcended the boundaries of past, present, and all possible futures. As if responding to their thoughts, light briefly streamed through the stained glass window in patterns resembling the library's central chamber, casting prismatic colors across the room. It was a gentle reminder that some connections, once forged, exist beyond the constraints of time itself.